Martin Lewis has hailed the government's U-turn on winter fuel payments as a massive improvement, and he joins us now. So you're one of those on the side of the argument here this morning, Martin, saying, OK, however we got here, this is a reasonably good place to be.
Well, yeah, I'm not particularly interested in the politics. I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to be knocking about what people should be doing. We just need to look at the practicals. From my perspective, that's what I focus on. Now, look, I've been on the show berating the government over what it did on the winter fuel payment ever since it did it nearly a year ago. And it would be churlish of me, having been calling for them to make change when they have done a change that is a far better system than it was, to be knocking them for it. Let's go back to what the problem was with the means test. There were two main things. First of all, setting an initial threshold for the means test on winter fuel payment for state pensioners of £11,600 was just too low. The typical energy bill is £1,700, but pensioners tend to be at home more and need the heating on more, so may well be using more than £1,700. So to only help those who earn less than £11,600 last winter, that threshold is now £11,800, meant that people just above that threshold were really struggling without it. Because what you have to remember is last winter, compared to the winter before, we also had all the cost of living payments about the energy crisis. So it wasn't just winter fuel payment that disappeared for many people. There were hundreds of other pounds of payments that went too. But the really big problem, and Susanna will remember the one I gave Pat McFadden a hard time about just 3 or 4 weeks ago, is that as someone who has been trying to get people to claim pension credit for the last decade, it is a critically underclaimed benefit. Even after all the publicity we've had, 700,000 eligible pensioners who should be getting pension credit don't claim it, whether they've got onset dementia or it's too difficult or too complicated. So it was an absolutely flawed system for the government to link winter fuel payments with pension credit. And what it meant, let's be really practical, was 700,000 of the poorest and most vulnerable pensioners, those earning less than £11,800, which is when the government says you should get winter fuel payment, were not getting winter fuel payment. And that was a very dangerous situation. So shifting to a system where the payment is automatic, which means all the vulnerable people on the lowest incomes will by default get it, is for me a massive improvement. Okay. Yes.
Martin, you've outlined what the problems were. The government has now come up with a solution. So the threshold is raised to £35,000. Now, can you explain to people, is that per individual? Is it per household? And do you have to claim it? Or is it given to you and then the tax system takes it away from you if you're above the threshold?
OK, so everybody who was born before the 22nd of September 1959, every household with somebody of that age in it will automatically get the winter fuel payment. So you do not have to claim. And let me just say at this point, I have already seen scams out there, people being texted and having messages on social media with links or numbers to call to claim. Do not touch those. They are scams. You do not have to apply for this new winter fuel payment. Don't let anybody think they have to apply. So it will be paid automatically. Then, even though the payment is a household payment, if an individual state pensioner earns over £35,000, they will have their portion of the winter fuel payment clawed back through the tax system. Now, that will either be done by changing your tax code if you're on PAYE, which many on private pensions are, or it will be done through self-assessment. The government is telling me it won't push anybody new into self-assessment because of this, which is a good thing, because self-assessment is complicated. But let me do it really practically for you. Let's imagine you're in a household with 2 over 80s. Therefore, the winter fuel payment is £300. It's a household payment. But if one of those pensioners earns over £35,000, they lose their half, their 150 goes. If the other pensioner earns over £35,000, they lose theirs. If they earn under £35,000, they keep theirs. So in that case, the household would receive £150,000. If you were 2 under 70s, it would be £100 each. There is a slight complication here. It's going to sound a bit weird, but go with me. And there's a lot of little technicalities here. Like if you're on pension credit, it works slightly differently. But anyway, So if you've got an over 80 living with a state pensioner who's under 80, so this is the over 80, this hand, and this is the under 80, then £200 is deemed to be demarked to the over 80 and £100 belongs to the under 80. So if the over 80 is the one who earns over 35 grand, they would lose £200, which means the household would remain £100. I hope that's not too complicated, but effectively it's a household payment, but it's split per person on the number of pensioners, and it's the individual's earning, whether the individual is earning over £35,000, that counts whether it will be clawed back through the tax system or not.
No, that's
People can also, by the way, opt out of it.
That's crystal clear. And as you said earlier, the main thing is if you get any texts or emails or messages asking you to do something about this, don't.
Absolutely. I mean, you do not need to apply. The only thing you will be able to do at some point is opt out. We're not yet sure whether the opt out is individual or household. I'm waiting for the technical details on that. I should say my team and I have been working through the masses of complexities of questions that there always are for people's individual circumstances on this. And I will be publishing it on social media over the next couple of days once I have the full answers.
Great. Martin, we're lucky to have you on board. Thank you very much.